We really have no idea how the next 5 years will play out, never mind what will happen in the next 30. Yet, it is the job of the public education system to prepare children for this unpredictable future. Sadly, the current public educational model is failing the children in this regard. A child starting school in 2013 will be retiring in 2071. There is nobody alive today who has any idea of what the future will look like. One thing we can all agree on is that a child has a remarkable capacity for creativity and innovation, both of which we ruthlessly squander in effort to ensure a child has a well-rounded education. Creativity and innovation should be treated with the same status of mathematics and physics. I remember being in art class as a child, and there was one particular girl who never paid attention except for when it was time to draw. When the teacher asked her, "What are you drawing?" the girl replied, "I'm drawing a picture of God." The teacher pointed out that nobody knows what God looks like. The girl turned to the teacher and said very matter-of-factly, "They will know in a minute." Growing up, I also used to have cousins who would always play in the nativity scene at Christmas. The play didn't always go so smoothly. A prime example is one year, the first wise man sat down, brought his box and said, "I bring you gold." The second one set down his box saying, "I bring you myrrh." Lastly, the third one, as he presented his box, said, "Frank sent this." These two stories remind us of a child's remarkable ability to try, even if they make a mistake. They have no fear in being wrong. If you're not prepared to be wrong, you will never come up with something original. By adulthood, we lose that capacity to try. We become frightened of being wrong, of making a mistake. This, I believe, comes from the stigma associated with making a mistake in school. We learn that a mistake is one of the worst things that you can make. Thus, we educate children out of their creativity and innovation. It is said that all humans are born artists. The trouble is staying an artist into adulthood because the public educational system only really teaches one side of the brain. Something that I never really thought of until recently is that Shakespeare had a father at age 10. He was in someone's English class. Imagine if a teacher told Shakespeare to put down your pencil and stop writing that way. It doesn't really matter where you go in the world. All educational systems have the same hierarchy of subjects. First, it is of the hard sciences and mathematics and physics. Then it is language and humanities. Lastly, art. Art is even broken down into its own hierarchy with fine art and music at the top, and drama and dance at the very bottom. Why don't we teach dance every day like we do mathematics? And who and when and who decided that dance is not important? When did we start educating kids from the waist up so that by the time they are out of high school, we educate just the head and slightly to one side? I had this discussion with a friend of mine once. If an alien came to Earth and studied our public education, what would they say that the goal was? The consensus was that the goal of our educational system is to produce university professors. This is because the educational system, from the very moment a child walks into the classroom until they graduate high school, is all about getting into university. The child is taught to live in their head and slightly to one side. If you do not or cannot, then there is something wrong with the child. This is because the entire public educational system is predicted on academic ability and not on individuality. Interestingly, there was no formal educational system before the 19th century. The whole concept of an educational system came about because of industrialization, the need to train factory workers, hence only the most useful subjects were given in any weight.
This causes two problems. The first one is that, and sadly, even today, children are told not to study what they like because they would never get a job out of it. You will never be a musician, so don't waste your time. Or stop writing because you'll never be an artist, you'll never be an author, and you'll get nowhere. Study something that's useful, like physics, and then you can get a job. The second one, with the whole system of public education geared for the endless university, there are many brilliant, smart, creative, and innovative children who think they are not. simply because what the child enjoys or is good at is perceived to have no value and told to focus on what was arbitrarily made important out of necessity 100 years ago and not necessarily true today, and for a future nobody knows about. According to UNESCO, in 30 years, there will be more graduates than at any other point in history. This creates an interesting problem. Suddenly, a degree will become worthless. As it stands now, we have academic inflation. It used to be if you had a BA, you could get a job if you wanted one. Now, new graduates with a BA are back home playing video games because the job that required a BA, you now need an MA for. And the job that you needed your MA, you now need a PhD. What will the academic inflation be in 5 or 30 years? Looking forward into the future, one we can't predict, and with academic inflation on the rise, now it's time to consider a radical rethinking on our view of intelligence. The educational system and the rest of humanity needs to realize that intelligence is 3 things. It's diverse, it's dynamic, and it's artistic. Have you ever heard of Gillian Lynn? Probably not. I am sure you're familiar with her work. Gillian is a choreographer and choreographs some of the biggest theater productions in the world, including Cats and Phantom of the Opera. When she was asked about her life growing up, she told an interesting story, saying when she was in school, she felt hopeless. One day, the school sent home a letter to her parents saying Gillian had a learning disorder. She could not stay still, she had trouble focusing on the important subjects like mathematics, and her work was often late and low caliber. Today, we would just say she had ADHD, give her some pills, and tell Gillian to calm down. Now, in the 1930s, when Gillian and her mother went to see a specialist, an interesting thing happened. After about 20 minutes of the 3 speaking about Gillian's poor behavior, the specialist said he wanted to speak with her mom in private. Before leaving, the specialist turned on the radio. As the mom and specialist watched through the window, Gillian immediately got up and started dancing in perfect rhythm to the music. This prompted the specialist to say, "There's nothing wrong with Gillian. What she is a dancer. Make sure she goes to dance school." Gillian did in fact end up going to a dance school, where she marveled at how all the kids were like her. She said people who had to move to think. It was truly a wonderful blessing. Gillian went on to graduate from the Royal Ballet School, open her own studio, as well as being a premier dancer. One day, she met Andrew Lloyd Webber, and together they created some of the most successful theater productions in history, bringing joy to millions along the way. We need to ask ourselves and answer honestly, if in 2013, someone remarkable like that's starting the modern educational system, would they be successful today? How many Gillians have been told there's something wrong with them and medicated and then educated in a system that discourages creativity and innovation? We need to adopt a new human ecology, one that celebrates the richness and diversity of the human capability. We need to stop strip mining the children's mind the way we strip mine the earth. This method won't serve them into the future. Instead of discouraging human imagination, we need to be encouraging it, helping it to flourish and grow. There needs to be a revolution where creativity is seen as a positive notion. We need to see the children for the hope they are. As we walk into the future no one can predict, it is time to start educating the child in a way that educates the whole being, not just a half of their brain. We won't see this future, but they will. It is our job to help them make something of it.